Having the right attorney is a key component when buying or selling a business. I have seen firsthand the value that a seasoned mergers and acquisitions attorney can add for their clients. Let me tell you about a law firm that I have worked with and would highly recommend for anyone thinking about buying or selling a business. Benjamin Gussin and Associates. They are a law firm that has been representing buyers and sellers of businesses for more than 30 years. Believe me, they are experts. Not just experts in business transactions, but also real estate and tax guidance, which are both often required when buying or selling a business. From the initial steps of reviewing a letter of intent, right through to closing, the attorneys at Benjamin Gussin provide the personalized service and experience needed for putting the pieces together for a successful and flawless transaction. I've known the lead M&A partner, Lee Gussin, for many years, and I have never hesitated referring a client to him. So if you're looking to buy or sell a business, feel free to reach out to Lee at 847-861-6220. That's 847-861-6220. I thank them for sponsoring today's episode and hope you enjoy it.
Looking to buy, sell, or grow your business to position it for a sale? As the owner and managing partner of Sun Acquisitions, Domenic Rinaldi has personally been involved in over 300 M&A transactions. He has seen and done it all, consulting with large and small businesses across a broad range of industries. On M&A Unplugged, he'll interview buyers, sellers, and their advisors about their experiences scaling, selling, and acquiring businesses. On every episode, you will get key learnings, but most importantly, you will be better prepared for your own acquisition or sale. This is M&A Unplugged with your host, Domenic Rinaldi.
After decades of working with privately held companies, the one functional area that I see many owners struggle with is sales and marketing. For some reason, many privately held companies have difficulty recruiting, trading, motivating, and managing a sales and marketing function. Too often, I see the owners of a business being the primary sales and marketing resource. That is one sure way to decrease the value of your business. Our guest today is one of only a few master certified coaches in the world. Tom Kelly, the owner of Potential in Motion, is an expert in his field and specializes in working with owners, entrepreneurs, executives, and salespeople on many aspects of running and operating a successful business. Tom has successfully coached thousands of owners and executives spanning an 18-year career. I'm really looking forward to Tom sharing some of his invaluable insights on how to build a stellar sales and marketing function. Tom, welcome to M&A Unplugged.
Domenic, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, so Tom, for the M&A Unplugged community, maybe provide a little bit more background on yourself and the things you've done. I mean, you've got just such a background and experience of working with business owners and executives. So fill in some of the blanks, please.
Oh, of course. As you mentioned, I've been a coach now for 18 years. Prior to starting my coaching business in 2002, I spent the first 10 years of my career in various sales and marketing positions. I started out as an outside salesperson selling construction products. I was a national accounts manager for a while, ran a division of a company for a couple of years. And finally, my last quote unquote real job before I started my own business was director of business development, running a 52-person sales team in the tech space. So I have a lot of sales and marketing background. And, what happened actually in 2002, beginning of 2002, right after September 11th, as you know, the dot-com bubble had burst. And we had September 11th, and the company I was working for went from 12,000 employees to 3,000 employees in about 6 months. So long story short, I ended up having to lay off my entire sales team, and then I got laid off in the beginning of 2002. And so I started the business Potential in Motion actually out of necessity. I came from an industry that was decimated, and I'd always been very entrepreneurial. So I took about 6 months to do some market research and decided to become a business coach, and I've been doing it ever since.
Well, so a couple of lessons here, right? One is, we're in the middle of this COVID crisis. And so there are a lot of people out there that are going to need to sort of retool and pivot And you're a perfect example of that. And I know your experience goes way beyond sales and marketing. I know you coach owners and executives on many functions and areas and just overall success. But today we're gonna focus in on sales and marketing. So Tom, let me ask, why is it, do you think, that owners have such a difficult time building and maintaining a successful sales organization? And time again, when I go in to analyze companies, I'm shocked at how few success stories they have from a sales perspective and how often the owner is, the rainmaker in the company, which you and I both know devalues the business quite a bit.
Absolutely. Dominic, I think really there's two reasons. The first reason is why they got in the business in the first place. Most people start a business because they're good at a certain thing. For example, I'm a carpenter today. I start a carpentry business, or I'm an electrician, or I'm good at, whatever it is that I'm good at, and I start a business doing that. So they don't come from a sales and marketing background, and it's foreign to them. It's not something that they're good at, and it's not a natural skill. The second thing, and the big reason too, I think, is mindset. Most of us have experienced a situation where you've had a bad experience with a salesperson. Whether that's a telemarketer calling you and interrupting your dinner, or perhaps you've had that used car salesperson situation where you go in to buy a car and you feel like pressured and it's awkward and it's icky, and people inherently don't want to be that person. So they tend to shy away from that part of their business and focus on their strengths and what they know really well. And therefore, the sales and marketing piece gets neglected.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. I mean, we'll even see owners who had started with the business very young and over many years actually came to own the business. They bought the owner out, but they spent no time in sales and marketing. And so they had a specific functional expertise, but no sales and marketing. And then they don't know how to run that function.
Exactly.
So Tom, what's your approach when you walk into a business, an owner calls you and says, look, I don't know how to build a sales and marketing function. I don't know how to incent these folks. Help me figure out how to build it. Do you have a template that you follow? What's your advice to an owner?
The first thing, Dominic, I do, and I really think everyone should do this from when they're selling anything, is I ask them and I, really explore with them what their challenges are. What's going on in the business, and what are the challenges that are keeping them up at night and preventing the business from, blossoming and getting to the point where they want it. So that's step number one. Step number two is really, what would you like it to be like? If I could wave a magic wand and make it perfect, what would the business look like? And that really kind of helps us figure out where they are today and what their challenges are, and then where they want to go. And depending on those two, answers really helps me understand what some of the issues are in the business. And really, I think there's two key things in any business. Number one, you have to have a client fulfillment system, a way to fulfill your promise to your customers. And then number two, you have to have a client acquisition system, or in other words, a sales and marketing system to bring customers in. And that's where most people struggle, as we've mentioned already. And that's usually where I kind of drill down and help them with that.
And so I'm certain that the word system is operative here in this conversation, right? You don't use that word lightly.
No, absolutely. And I think it's important, because if you don't have a system on both sides of the equation, if you don't have a client acquisition system, then you're not going to get predictable results from your sales and marketing. And if you don't have a client fulfillment system, you're not going to get consistent results when it comes to delivering your promise to the customer. And the number one thing that I see that destroys a business is inconsistency. If you really think about it, if you go to your favorite restaurant and, one time you go, you have a fabulous meal, and the next time you go, the meal is horrible, you're probably not going to continue to go to that business. So consistency is really important. And the businesses that get that right, even if they're not operating at the highest level, will continue to grow their business. Think about McDonald's for a second, right? McDonald's doesn't make the greatest burger in the world, but they have one of the greatest systems in the world. You get a consistent meal, even though it's not that great, anywhere you go in the world. And it's a great example of how to systematize your business so that it's consistent throughout.
And so, Tom, is your approach, let's tackle the system first and we'll worry about the people second?
Exactly. Most of the people I start with, by the way, Dominic, from a sales perspective, are in one of two camps. Number one, it's a smaller business where, either they're just getting started or they're struggling. And like you mentioned before, the owner of that business is the one that's primarily responsible for selling. So I'll start to work with that person. Or it's an existing business that maybe already has a sales team in place. They're just not operating at a high level. So we need to fix that. And really, what I look at in both of those situations is, let's troubleshoot and see what the issues are. And I find issues in two areas. I always tell people, any result you create in your business or in your life for that matter comes down to two things. Number one, your mindset, and number two, your strategy. And I find it's 80% mindset, 20% strategy. So I look at both of those things and figure out, hey, what do we need to address here in order to help them be successful?
So we'll talk a little bit more about mindset. What's your approach there? How are you helping them think through their mindset and the mindset that the company has towards sales and marketing?
Sure, exactly. So most people I find when it comes to sales have, really some disempowering and negative beliefs around salespeople. We've all been interrupted at dinner by the telemarketer. We've all been, approached by the aggressive salesperson that won't take no for an answer. And nobody wants to be that person. And if that's your mindset, if your mindset is, hey, if I get on the phone and make a call to a prospect, I'm bugging them, or, I'm that icky, salesperson, you're not going to take action on that. So I can show you the greatest system in the world and teach you exactly how to sell. But if your mindset is such that you're afraid to do that, you're not going to do it, and you're not going to do it consistently. So really dive down into that. I look at, what are their belief systems? What are their thoughts around what it means to be a salesperson? And we dive into that, and I really coach them around those things so we can create some shifts in how they think about things, so that as they move forward, they have a positive view of what it means to be a salesperson and what it means, to sell for their company. So that's really how I address the mindset side of things.
Makes perfect sense. And I've seen in many companies where folks that are not in the sales function have sort of this disdain towards the sales folks. They think they're overcompensated, think they're prima donnas. They get paid for stuff that, they didn't really generate. And I find the mindset in companies tends to be fairly unhealthy sometimes around the sales function and the marketing function.
Absolutely. There tends to be tension between, the two sides of the wall, so to speak, right? On the one side, you have the salesperson who's the outward focusing, client focused person. Then internally, you have all the operations people and the people that are delivering that promise to the customer. And oftentimes there's a lot of tension between those two things simply because, the salesperson's out there meeting with that customer and trying to meet those customer needs. And then those internal people, they have to, step up and deliver whatever the promises that the salesperson made. So oftentimes what happens, there's a lot of tension there. And especially when, your operations people and your internal people don't understand sales, and they also are disconnected from what the customer needs are and the customer demands. They don't understand that. So they're a little bit off put by some of the things that the salesperson, needs them to deliver on. And, that can create a lot of tension.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. So let's back up a bit, Tom, and you started to talk about a system. So what is your approach to helping an owner look at and build a successful sales and marketing system?
Mm-hmm. Really from a sales perspective, I say there's a 4-step process that I like to teach people, whether you're brand new to sales and you've never sold anything before, or you're an experienced veteran salesperson. I think there's 4 key things that you really need to focus on, when you're trying to sell someone something. And really, I think, first of all, it's a mindset shift, right? I don't look at sales in the traditional way of most people thinking of salespeople. I look at a salesperson more as a consultant. And the salesperson's job is to really understand, is there an opportunity with this customer? And the way we determine that is, what are the customer's challenges? And do I have a solution that can meet those challenges and help them solve that problem? So step number 1 to the system is really understanding what that customer's challenges are. So, for example, if I'm talking to someone about, their business and around coaching, I'll ask them a question, what is your biggest business challenge? And what that does is it opens up a conversation about what those things are that they're challenged with, what they're struggling with in their business. And I'll explore that in a deep and meaningful way to really understand what the pain points are and what the challenges are. So that's step number one. Step number two is the opposite of that. What would you like it to be like? In a perfect world, if we were able to solve all these challenges, what would that end state look like? What is the outcome that you're trying to generate? And really, digging into that in a deep level and understanding what it is that they want. Number three is really the key, I think, to sales, and that's what's preventing you from having that. I like to call it the problem under the problem. Most people are not going to tell you up front exactly what their challenge is. For example, if I ask a business owner, what's your biggest challenge? And they say, well, we need more business. And I explore that deeply with them. And then finally I ask them, what's preventing you from getting business? They say, well, I don't know how to sell. So the real problem is they don't know what they're doing from a sales perspective, but they are not going to tell you that up front. So that third question of what's preventing you from getting that outcome is really important. And then finally, the fourth thing is, hey, if I could show you a way to solve that problem so that you can get over those challenges and create the result that you want, what value does that have to you? And this is critically important because as long as the value is greater than what you're going to charge them for that product or service, you're going to make that sale every time. But if the value in their eyes is less than what you're going to charge them, you're going to have a hard time connecting the dots and making that sale.
So Tom, boy, so much there to unpack. So you're in consulting with an owner about how to build a sales and marketing function, and you're stripping it down to these four components. So are you interviewing the owner at this point, and is the owner providing the answers to these questions so that you can then go back and build a sales process that works for their clientele and prospects? Or how does that work in, from your perspective?
Yeah, again, Dominic, it depends on the business, right? If the business is such that the owner is the person selling, absolutely, I'm going to start with that owner. Now, if it's a larger business that has a sales team in place and a sales manager, I always like to start with the owner because that gives me kind of a 30,000 foot view of what's going on in the business. But then from there, I'm going to want to talk to that sales manager, and I'm also going to want to talk to the salespeople and get a good understanding of kind of where they're at with things and what their thought process is. So I sort of get a 360-degree view of what the challenges are and what the problems are. Also, sometimes what I will do is I will use some assessment tools that I have that will give me some black and white detail as far as what the skills are of the salespeople and the sales manager to give me an even deeper view of what some of the challenges are and what those issues are before I move forward.
Yeah, let's come back and talk about the assessment tools, but let's stick on these four components for a second. So is there ever a time where you would also maybe on behalf of the company interview clients and prospects?
Oh, absolutely. I'm going to do whatever it takes and whatever I need to from a coaching perspective to understand what the challenge and what the problem is, right? So talking to customers is going to give me that additional viewpoint of that outside world and what their experience is like going through that process. And that's, can be tremendously important.
Yeah. And it also validates, does the company really have their finger on the pulse of their clients and their prospects, right? Or are they more in a, we wish our clients and prospects wanted this and that versus this is what they really want?
Well, exactly, right. I always tell my clients that, you've got to get clear about where you are at today. You don't want to make it worse than it is. You don't want to make it better than it is. But where are we at right now today? And sometimes there's a huge disconnect there. Yeah. The leader of the company or even the sales manager, salespeople think they're doing something and it's working really well. And when you go talk to the customers, they're giving you a completely different story.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. So, Tom, is the outcome of these four areas, is it some sort of process tool or system that you then can deliver back to the owner so that they actually have the process and the system to follow and to train and recruit the right salespeople with? Is that what happens from this?
In a simple format, absolutely. And just to be clear here, as a coach, I don't do that work. I, coach them on that and make them do the work, which I think is even more powerful because they're having to build that themselves versus me building it and giving it to them. Mm-hmm. And I think when you have someone else do the work, they have more vested interest in making that successful. So I work with them and kind of coach and consult them on how to build that system so that once they have that system, a couple things happen. Number one, when they hire salespeople, they know exactly what they're looking for because they know what their system is and who's going to thrive in that system. So it really helps from the hiring perspective. The second thing, when you're onboarding that salesperson, now you have something to train them to. And also you have metrics. So for example, if you have a sales force of 10 people and you've been running this system and tracking the results for a year, you know exactly what an average salesperson is doing in your system. So we can do a couple things with that. Number one, now I can benchmark the salespeople against that. Hey, are you below average, above average, or right in the middle? And what kind of results are you getting? And then number two, I can help them optimize that system by looking at each step of the process, and we can keep tweaking that until it gets better and better and we get better outputs at the other end.
Yeah, that makes great sense. I mean, the ability to track key performance indicators and against an average makes a ton of sense. So, Tom, you'd mentioned assessment tools, and I know that we've worked with you in the past on some of this stuff. And even in former lives, I've done a fair number of assessment tools. Let's talk a little bit about that and the role that they play in maybe selection and training and all of those other areas.
Absolutely. I think it's, assessments. I always recommend to my clients that at the end of their, interview process, they use some type of an assessment to get a real black and white view of what they're hiring and who they're hiring. And this is so important, especially for salespeople. Because most salespeople, if they're even halfway good at what they do, can sell you on the fact that they can do the job. So, they're going to tell you how great they are. They're going to tell you they can get results. The assessment's going to really tell you what their skills and talents are and can they actually do what they say they're going to do. So when you hire someone, you want to make sure that, maybe you interview 10 people and you narrow it down to 2 or 3, and you use the assessment to kind of screen out as that final cut who's going to be the best fit. The other thing that's really important if you have a sales team is I can benchmark your best salespeople using an assessment tool. And then when you interview, we can compare the people you're interviewing to the cream of the crop on your team to see how they match up. And it'll tell you exactly, who you're hiring and what you're hiring from a skill perspective. The other thing it does is it gives you, sort of a document on how to coach them. So you know exactly where their strengths are and where their opportunities are. And as you onboard them, you can work with them as a sales manager or as a business owner in those areas that they need some help to, constantly improve their skill sets. So you can use it from a hiring perspective right there. I also use them when I'm developing salespeople. So I can go in and do assessments on different salespeople within your organization and identify what their strengths and opportunities are, build a coaching plan and a development plan and coach them up in those areas that they need some help so that they're better at what they do.
Yeah, these are all tremendous tools. And again, I mean, all in the spirit of every company needs a healthy pipeline of prospects and a good client base, and having a really, solid sales and marketing function matters. It will increase the value of your business dramatically if you as the owner do not have to, be in a sales role and you've got salespeople that can bring in business, take care of repeat clients, and do that sort of on autopilot, and you don't have to worry about it. Tom, let's dive into one other area. And I don't know how much you get into this, but I find a big disconnect as well in the area of compensation. So even if an owner is capable of, finding salespeople and onboarding them, I oftentimes see that the compensation is completely misaligned with what the owner ultimately wants. And they're constantly having to tweak and play with the compensation. And as you and I both know, one sure way to demotivate your salespeople and create turnover is tweak their compensation.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. That's a huge one for salespeople.
Yeah. And so, Tom, what's your approach there with owners? Do you delve into the area of compensation and helping them understand what the right compensation package would be and mix between base and bonus or commission and how those should be structured?
It's critical, Dominic, because as you said, the biggest motivator for a salesperson is to win, is to compete. And the way they measure their success is by how much money they're making. And it's also critical to the business because you want to make sure that your salespeople are highly incentivized to go out and sell and to bring in business. At the same time, you don't want to overpay them or put yourself in a situation where they're bringing in more and more business and you're losing more and more money. So you've got to make sure that you're, adjusting your compensation and it's in the right ballpark there from that perspective. Also, too, you really need to look at what is the behavior you want to incentivize. What are the key metrics that you want them to focus on? And then number two, what type of salesperson are you talking about? Is that, I really kind of put, salespeople into two categories. Number one is the hunter type salesperson. Hunter type salesperson is the person that, is really good at going out and getting new business. They're able to network and develop new leads, turn those new leads into business. And, those types of salespeople are worth their weight in gold. The second type is your farmer type salesperson. This is a salesperson that's really good at building relationships with your existing customer base and growing those relationships by cross-selling them and upselling them and making sure that you retain those customers. And oftentimes, you want to incentivize those salespeople in different ways because they're driven by different things. Typically, your hunter type salesperson is going to be on commission, and they're going to eat what they kill, so to speak. And they're really driven by being able to make a lot of money based on the results that they create. And your farmer type salespeople are more, steady in their approach, and they're usually better compensated on a base plus bonus type situation because they're a little bit more cautious from the standpoint of, wanting that job security and wanting that steady base. And you want those people on your team as well. So you need a good mix of both of those types of salespeople.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. And I know we you and I are oversimplifying here because there's so many different shades of compensation, and getting the right mix can be hard. But these constructs, I think, are very helpful. And then you have to tweak it to make it, work for your individual business.
Absolutely. And, even, what's interesting too is I work with a lot of my clients on their sales process. And I find that a lot of times what happens is in their sales process, a lot of the cost of selling is at the beginning of the process. So in other words, they're, showcasing and maybe demonstrating a lot of their products, or maybe even doing, designs for somebody or showing what they can deliver in the front end of the process, which is costing them a lot of money. And what I do is I come in and show them how to push that off to the back end of the process after they made the sale, so that their sales system does not cost them so much money, and that they can get the customer and start generating revenue before they're having to outlay those costs, which is also important.
Yeah. Yeah. So Tom, as we look to wrap up here, let me ask you, what overarching thoughts would you provide to owners of businesses, or even buyers who are looking to buy a business and analyzing the sales and marketing function of that target business or looking to acquire? What advice would you offer to folks?
Well, two things. First of all, if you're a business owner, again, remember there's two key systems you need to have. You need to have a client acquisition system, the sales and marketing, so you can bring in customers, and you need to have a client fulfillment system. And those two things need to work in conjunction. If you're bringing in all these clients, but you can't service that business, you're going to damage your brand in the marketplace. And if you don't have enough sales, you're not going to be able to survive. So it's really the lifeblood of your company. So as you mentioned before, if you want to add more value to your business and you want to grow your business, you have to nail the sales piece. Now, if you're buying a business, there's a great opportunities out there right now when you look at a business and you say, hey, this is a business that has a great product and they have a great operation system, but maybe they're not where they need to be from a sales perspective. And oftentimes, if you have that expertise, or if you can work with someone like myself that can help you with that expertise to go in and, kind of rearrange and, retool and refocus their sales systems, you can double and triple the revenues of a business pretty quickly. So if you're out there looking to buy a business, the number one thing I would look for is a business that has a great product or service, but they're not getting the sales piece right.
Yeah, because if you've got that skill set, man, you can really put that business on steroids.
Absolutely. And in the business you're in, buying and selling businesses and helping people with that, there's so many businesses out there right now that are, maybe in a turnaround situation, or they're at the end of the life of the business owner. They're looking to retire, or they're looking to go in a different direction and get out of that business. And usually what happens when they're at that point is they've lost that, that passion and that focus on the business. So you can almost see it in them that they need to have somebody else come in and take over that business and take it to that next level, because it's just not reaching, its potential.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Tom, this has been great. You're a hell of a coach. I think this was great information. If folks wanted to get in touch with you, how could they reach you?
Yeah, the best way to reach me is online. They can go to my website, which is businesscoachchicago.com. They can also call me directly in my office, which is 630-668-3005, or they can email me. My email is tomkelly@potentialinmotion.com.
Tom, thanks again. Really appreciate you being here today.
You're welcome. Thanks for the opportunity, and hopefully this adds value for everyone that's listening.
Yeah, it certainly will. M&A Unplugged community, all of today's information will be available in the show notes. If you would like to learn more about the process of acquiring or selling a business, please visit our website at sunacquisitions.com, or feel free to reach out to me at drinaldi@sunacquisitions.com. I look forward to seeing you again on the next episode of the M&A Unplugged podcast. And until then, please remember that scaling, acquiring, or selling a business takes time, preparation, and the proper knowledge.
Thank you for joining us today on M&A Unplugged. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe, rate, and recommend it wherever you get your podcasts. If you want more great information on how to scale, acquire, or sell a business, please visit our website at sunacquisitions.com.